Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Warcraft lore. So, Ysera's death was a pretty pivotal moment, and we actually now know that her story is not over. What we've seen in Ardenweald on the Alpha actually tells us something extremely important. It tells us when the Machine of Death broke. Now, this breaking of the Machine of Death has led to anima going straight to the Maw, and that's meant that the regular realms of the Shadowlands are, well, starved of energy. And that plays into, of course, the plan of the Jailer, who is the primary villain of this next expansion. Now, what's key here is that it actually seems like that breaking of the Machine of Death, well, happened right in front of us during Legion, and it's quite a fun story. So, in Ardenweald, the first stage of a soul's rebirth is as a wild seed. Now, these seeds are then fed anima, like sort of fertilizer, and you sort of nurture to maturity. Now, one particular wild seed is Ysera. Yeah, she's back there. Now, she's beset by nightmares, but along with the Dreamweaver, we calm her down. And then the lore bomb drops. The Dreamweaver states, "This spirit was within the last group to arrive before the drought." And yes, they call what happened when the anima stopped the drought. So the machinery of death breaking, well, that has prevented anima from entering the realms of the Shadowlands, meaning that, yes, whenever Ysera died, well, she went to Ardenweald. That's where she was supposed to go, and that means the machinery was still functioning at that time. That means the Arbiter was functional, was doing her job, and that all was how it should be. Now, what matters is that this gives us a timeline, and through that timeline, we can begin to work out, well, why Shadowlands is happening, what Sylvanas' role is, and how Genn Greymane might actually have been the guy that messed everything up, and of course the mechanics of what's going on, and is this world really a bit of a prison with this creepy machine setup? And hey, is Sylvanas right? Is Azeroth a prison? Well, to be honest, if it is, then she broke out of it, and that's clearly because the Titans didn't use Dashlane, today's sponsor, and a favorite tool of my team that you will get 10% off on at dashlane.com/Bellular. So, Dashlane generates a high security password for every website that you use, and then automatically logs you in through its extensions. And that means, right, you just never have to manually type in a password again. It's more secure and it's convenient, which is great for me. And then, you know, it even works through your phones, so it's great. Security, convenience, super handy. Your info is locally decrypted with your master password, and that means that even if Dashlane themselves were hacked, well, like if their servers were hacked, it would be like breaking into a bank and finding out the bank doesn't actually have the key to the vault because it's locally decrypted with your master password. They've also got dark web monitoring, a VPN, and if a site that you use is compromised, is hacked, then they'll just send you a security alert to update your passwords. You get all that in one app across all of your platforms, and if you follow my link and use the promo code Bellular, you will get 10% off. So, thanks to them for being super convenient and super safe, supporting our team. And with that said, let's get into the video. Alright, so we know that the Machinery of Death broke sometime during Legion, but how does the timeline actually add up? Well, with this revelation, we know that it happened after Val-Shara. Now, based on what we've looked at here, it seems that Stormheim is our answer, because it does happen canonically after Val-Shara, and a big thank you to Dreamweaver over in the Warcraft lore subreddit, who put a lot of the initial work together on this whole theory and the idea that it was Stormheim that kicked this off. So with Stormheim, Sylvanas ostensibly was there to get more Valkyr. Why? Well, she had burned through her existing bunch of Valkyr, basically, and those Valkyr, well, they're both the key to her own survival and the replenishment of her people, so that's why she wanted a way to get more. And to do that, she ended up making a pact with Helya, who of course was the first Valkyr of Odin's group of them. Now, of course, that was with Odin basing them off the Kyrian, so we meet in the next expansion. Now, Helya didn't want to be a Valkyr. She harbored resentment against Odin, who was a bit of a dick. She betrayed him, and eventually she struck up this deal with Sylvanas. Now, here's the deal, right? All that we know is that through this deal, Sylvanas got the Soul Cage, and that the Soul Cage would allow her to enslave Aegir, who is the current leader of Odin's Valkyr. Now, many think the Soul Cage is just a spooky lantern, but considering its shape, its name, and what we know of the Shadowlands, I think it's obvious that this was something else. It could be even the perfect receptacle for a soul. I mean, if you just look at its visual language, right, these visual effects in the cinematic, and then compare them with the anima effects from Shadowlands, I mean, they're the same style, they're the same color, they're that sort of good, like, Titan anima effect of the Arbiter's group, as opposed to the dark purple of the Jailer's magic. And then you've got to wonder, like, yeah, the Soul Cage, why has it got that type of magic look going on? And why does it just subjugate Aegir, a Titan creation, if it is some sort of Shadowlands relic? That certainly does raise major questions about what's actually going on here between the Titan characters of Azeroth and, you could maybe say, some of the Titan-related characters of the Shadowlands and, whoever actually set the Shadowlands up. Now, of course, as we all know, the Soul Cage was destroyed by Genn, and it seems like the destruction of the Soul Cage was a major moment. I mean, just look at what happened when the Helm of Domination, which is another artifact, look what happened when it broke, okay? So the question here is, did Sylvanas know what she was doing? What was actually going on? The big context. Was her goal at that point just to secure her future and that of her people by enslaving Aegir, or by that stage, was she actually fully working with the Jailer? And this is where things get tricky. So we know that Muzala, who is currently in league with the Jailer, we know that he installed Sylvanas as war chief by whispering her name to Vol'jin on his deathbed. Now, was that because Sylvanas was working directly with them, or was that just that the Jailer's faction merely unleashed Sylvanas upon the world, with a more direct alliance being something that would have happened later on in their journey together? Now, Sylvanas wanted that Soul Cage, as we said, to capture Valkyr, so that she could then resurrect herself if she was killed, and then produce more Forsaken. That could just have been it. Or she could have, if she was actually in league with Jailer at this point, wanted it so she could have raised up as many Forsaken as she wanted, purely to maximize the destruction in the planned war with the Alliance. And you could say that's something that would have increased the anima yield of the Jailer, but then that runs into a bit of a logical problem, where she would have been doing that to increase the anima yield of the Jailer, but if destroying the Soul Cage is what broke the machinery of death, then she could not have actually got those Valkyr. And this is where Sylvanas having a super direct role with the Jailer, to me, gets a little bit fuzzy. Because yes, if destroying the Soul Cage to break the machinery of death was, if that was actually what the Jailer wanted, then Sylvanas, well, she wouldn't have got what she would have wanted, more Valkyr, which she needed the Soul Cage for. And that makes me think that at this stage, she was not directly working with the Jailer. I think, right, the Jailer saw what Sylvanas wanted and thought, oh, okay, she'll be useful to have running around the place on Azeroth. And I think then that more direct alliance happened later. Now anyway, what matters here is that before the Soul Cage could be used to compel Aegir, well, what happened? Genn destroyed it. And this pissed Sylvanas off. She gripped her bow really tight, gritted her teeth, and was angry. And it might have actually also broken the Shadowlands. Just before its destruction, Aegir told Sylvanas, "You know not what you're meddling with." So the question is, was Aegir right? Did Sylvanas know what she was meddling with, and what the Soul Cage actually was? Because it could have been more tied to the Arbiter. I mean, just look at this picture of the Jailer. I mean, it sort of has a bit of a cavity in his chest for anima or soul, right? Well, the Arbiter's also got one of those chest cavities, just that, hers is empty, right? And she's now dormant, canonically. Now, the Arbiter being dormant, that's what made the machinery of death break, right? Cutting off that flow of anima to the realms of the Shadowlands and sending it all to the Maw, which is the Jailer's realm. But then, you've got to wonder, how does the destruction of the Soul Cage line up with the Arbiter's dormant state? Well, to work that one out, we've got to actually speculate on what the consequences of Genn's actions were, if this is actually the case. Now, much like the Helm of Domination, the Soul Cage is quite clearly another powerful artifact from the Shadowlands. Now, consider this. If the Soul Cage actually housed, say, the soul of the Arbiter, or was at least tied to it, then, yeah, its destruction would shut down the machinery of death. That would make total, clear, simple sense. That, or, it could just be another powerful artifact, the nature of which we don't exactly know, and the destruction of which caused the problem. Now, it was, though, the Soul Cage obtained by the Jailer's forces, of course, Helya, and then given to Sylvanas. So because of that, I think here are our options. Number 1. Sylvanas wanted the Soul Cage purely for control of the Valkyr, which would have indirectly helped the Jailer. Number 2, Sylvanas wanted to enslave Odin's Valkyr as a part of a direct effort from the Jailer and a direct alliance to dismantle the Titan infrastructure of Azeroth and replace Odin with Helya. And it could actually be that that would have been a part of an older plan from the Jailer. We actually know from Warcraft Traveler that at one stage the idea was for Muzala to pretty much just consume all life, and it could have been that Muzala consuming all life would only be possible if the Titans, the Titan Keepers anyway, like Odin, were taken down, and perhaps with the Soul Cage taking out Aegir and messing up the Halls of Valor, that actually could have happened. And then there's option number 3, that the Soul Cage was useful to Sylvanas, and the Jailer's side knew that if Sylvanas succeeded and subjugated Aegir, it would help them because Odin and co be weaker, but also that if it was destroyed, say by Genn, then it would also help them. Now, I am going to err on the side of Sylvanas not being fully clued in at this stage, because the destruction of the Soul Cage did not fulfill her direct stated goal, and Aegir warned Sylvanas that she didn't know what she was messing with. So, I think here that the Soul Cage incident helped the Jailer's side, and that Sylvanas, now fearing, right, for her true oblivion and defeat with her, rapidly depleting force of Valkyr, that she was then led, because the Soul Cage plan for her failed, that she was led to get formally cozy with the Jailer, kicking off events past that point. Now, to be fair, we also do have to consider, anything else that could have broken the machinery of death, and when I was going through the Legion storyline, really all that I could think of was the destruction of Argus as another candidate there. Now, with Argus, that is, of course, assuming that he is, in fact, the Titan of Death, which I do believe him to be, and that he does have some sort of fundamental connection to the Shadowlands, which I would expect, and perhaps to the Arbiter. Of course, the Arbiter seems kind of titanic. Now, it also could be, though, that just the Soul Cage angle, right, that is directly involving Sylvanas, and would just be more in line with how Blizzard are writing the game these days, which I think would make sense. So with all this said, what remains to be answered? I mean, basically everything, right? Do we, can we put the Arbiter's soul back somehow? Is it really in the Soul Cage? The Jailer, is he out of his depth now? Did he just plan for the takeover of Odin's power via Helya and Sylvanas enslaving Odin's Valkyr, only to then have the whole Shadowlands situation fall to pieces because of Genn's intervention? How in with the Jailer was Sylvanas at that point? Did she only become a direct ally afterwards? Did Muzala install her in the War Chief's throne because of an agreement that she had with the Jailer, or was that the Jailer and Muzala just, putting pieces on their chessboard together? I mean, just look at Sylvanas in that coronation cinematic. Again, look at her after Genn destroyed the Soul Cage, and I would say there, is she lying at the coronation? Is she that good of an actor? I mean, I'm not really that sure. If the plan was to destroy the Soul Cage and break the machinery of death, then why would Sylvanas be so angry at the destruction of the Soul Cage and seem like such a Horde patriot at the start of Legion? Is this actually Blizzard trying to retrofit a modern version of a story on top of what they laid down at Legion, even if the character motivations and the cinematics don't always line up? It's kind of hard to say. I would say that, though, at this point in Legion, I don't think that Sylvanas was directly in league with the Jailer. I think she was a useful figure for the Jailer to have running around the place. I do think, though, that as time grew and Sylvanas' plans failed, she was pushed more and more towards him to, I guess, probably try to actually master death. Now, the Soul Cage incident then likely accelerated the Jailer's plans, and it certainly stifled Sylvanas's. I think with knowledge of the Realm of Death and little other option, that's probably when she then had to become a card-carrying enemy of life. And then there's also, of course, Helya, right? In BFA, we found out that she was still active, so assuming that her deal with Sylvanas still stands, what's up there? Will we return from the Shadowlands to find out that Helya has just taken out Odin and done a bunch of crazy stuff? Well, I think thus far we've got a fair idea of when the machinery of death broke and what's kicked off Shadowlands. We don't know the full mechanics of its breaking, but we can now start to begin teasing useful information out of the timeline. If the machinery of death broke at the end of Stormheim, then we can expect everyone who died after the events of Stormheim to have ended up in the Maw, and that means essentially every major patch of Legion and then the entirety of BFA. So, a character like Sarfang, he'd be in the Maw, but a character like Varian Rin, well, he died before the machinery broke, so he will be in a realm of the Shadowlands. So then I suppose as we're moving on, we've got to ask ourselves, will we fix this machinery of death? And really, more importantly, do we want to fix it? I mean, I know Sylvanas has went off the deep end, but that doesn't necessarily mean that she's wrong, that what she's saying isn't true. What if this machinery of death truly is a bit of a prison, right? If this whole situation is just an anima-generating scheme set up by the Titans? Well, that's what we're going to investigate in our next video, and I can promise you, it will be rather titanic and a little bit spooky. Should be quite exciting. But there you go. That's when the machinery of death broke, we think. I would love, though, to know from you, do you think Sylvanas is in this, like, at that time? How much of a direct alliance do you think she had with the Soul Cage? What do you think the Soul Cage is? Seriously, this lore stuff, you know, it's a dialogue, it's a discussion. So these are, you know, this is like the ideas of us and over in the Warcraft lore subreddit. But then, you know, it's got to go to you guys. Then you guys have got to tell us what you think, because going through those comments, we could get some really cool theories. It could advance what's actually going on here, and that could start to get really exciting. So do let me know. Thank you for watching today's video. And with that, I'll see you next time.